This was the house that remembered my name. My husband buried an empty coffin. But I was standing 300 miles away, and now I have come back to claim what is mine.
My name is Claire Bennett. I was 42 years old when my old life ended. And this is the story of how I came back to bury the people who had stolen it. I grew up in a small town called Bellwether, about an hour outside Nashville, Tennessee. It was the kind of place where church bells marked the hours, neighbors remembered your first car, and secrets never disappeared. They only changed owners. My mother, Evelyn, owned the Bellwether house, a large white home at the edge of town. It had tall windows, dark wooden floors, and a porch that wrapped around 3 sides. My grandfather had built it in 1948. My mother turned it into a bed and breakfast after my father died. I loved that house. My younger sister, Mara, hated it. Mara was 6 years younger than me. She was beautiful in a way that made people forgive her, before she had even done anything wrong. She had my mother's green eyes, my father's easy smile, and no patience for consequences. When we were children, I protected her. When she broke a neighbor's window, I said I had thrown the ball. When she stole money from our mother's purse at 16, I replaced it with savings from my summer job. When she dropped out of college, I helped pay her rent. I told myself that was love. It took me 30 years to understand that rescuing someone from every consequence does not save them. It teaches them that you are another thing they can use. My husband, Daniel, met Mara 2 years after he married me. At first, they barely spoke. Daniel was quiet, practical, and 10 years older than Mara. He worked as a financial advisor in Nashville and wore dark suits, even when everyone else wore jeans. I trusted him because he seemed steady. That was my first mistake. My mother became ill in the winter of 2023. The doctors called it an aggressive cancer. They gave her a year. She lived for 8 months. During those months, I drove to Bellwether almost every day. I cooked, cleaned, managed the guest reservations, and slept beside her bed when the pain became too strong. Daniel complained that I was never home, but he always apologized afterward. He would kiss my forehead and say he was only lonely. Mara visited 4 times. The last time, she arrived wearing a red coat and asked our dying mother if she planned to sell the house. Mother looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "Some people see a home. Some people see a price." Mara left before dinner. My mother died on a rainy Thursday in September. 2 weeks later, her attorney read the will. She left Mara $50,000. She left me the Bellwether house, the land around it, and ownership of the business. Mara smiled during the reading. But when we stepped into the parking lot, she grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. "You always get everything," she whispered. I reminded her that I had spent 8 months caring for our mother. She leaned close to me and said, "You think that makes you better than me?" "No," I answered. "I think it made me present." She slapped me. Daniel saw it happen. He pulled us apart and drove me home. That night, he held ice against my cheek and called Mara selfish, cruel, and dangerous. 11 months later, I learned that he had slept with her that same night. After Mother's death, I decided to restore the Bellwether house. The roof needed repair, several rooms needed new plumbing, and the old dining room had water damage. Daniel offered to manage the money. "This is what I do," he told me. "Let me take care of you." I signed forms without reading every page. I gave him access to the business accounts. I let him speak to the bank, the contractors, and the insurance company. That was my second mistake. The first strange thing happened in March. I received a call from a woman at the county records office. She wanted to confirm whether I had requested a certified copy of my mother's death certificate. I had not. She said someone using my identification had ordered 3 copies. When I asked where they had been sent, she became nervous and said she could not release that information over the phone. I told Daniel that evening. He did not look surprised. He turned away and opened the refrigerator. Probably an error, he said. Why would someone need 3 copies? Estate paperwork, insurance, anything. But I didn't order them. He closed the refrigerator without taking anything. Claire, you're exhausted. Let the attorney handle it. His voice was gentle, but something in his face was not. That night, I woke at 2 in the morning and found his side of the bed empty. Light showed beneath his office door. I walked down the hallway quietly. He was speaking on the phone. She suspects nothing, he said. Then the floor creaked beneath my foot. The office became silent. Daniel opened the door almost immediately. He smiled when he saw me, but his phone was already gone. Who were you talking to? I asked. A client in California. At 2 in the morning. Time difference. California was only 2 hours behind Tennessee. I knew that. He knew I knew it. Still, I said nothing. The next morning, I checked our phone account. The call history for his line had been deleted. I began paying attention. Daniel had always kept his phone face up. Now he turned it over whenever I entered a room. He started showering as soon as he came home. He changed the password on his computer. Twice I smelled Mara's perfume in his car. It was called Black Orchid. I knew the scent because I had given her the first bottle for Christmas. When I asked Daniel about it, he laughed. Half the women in Nashville wear that perfume. Was one of them in your car? His smile disappeared. For 3 seconds. We looked at each other without pretending. Then he kissed my cheek and said I was becoming paranoid because of grief. People like Daniel do not begin by making you believe their lies. They begin by making you distrust your own questions. I might have continued doubting myself if not for the letter. It arrived at the Bellwether house without a return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "Si es case bo, Urim pisar canado." The blue room was on the 2nd floor. It had once been my childhood bedroom. During the restoration, we had used it for storing furniture. I searched the room for an hour and found nothing unusual. Then I remembered a game Mother used to play with us. She would hide birthday gifts behind a loose wooden panel beneath the window seat. I pushed the panel. It moved. Inside the wall was a small metal box. The box contained an old digital recorder, a brass key, a photograph, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands began shaking before I opened the envelope. The letter was from my mother. Claire, if you are reading this, I am gone, and something has made you afraid. Trust that feeling. Daniel has been asking questions about the house, the insurance, and your signature. I saw him with Mara behind the east cottage. They did not see me. I confronted Mara, but she denied everything. I did not confront Daniel because I wanted proof. The key opens a safe, deposit box at First Tennessee Bank. Do not tell Daniel. Do not tell Mara. Listen to the recorder first. I am sorry I could not protect you longer. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. Then I turned on the recorder. My mother's voice filled the empty room. She sounded weak, but clear. She described seeing Daniel and Mara kissing behind the cottage. She described a conversation she had overheard days later. Daniel had told Mara that the house would be worth more than $2 million after renovation. Mara had asked how long they would have to wait. Daniel had answered, "Not long, if everything goes right." The recording ended with my mother saying something that froze the blood in my body. Claire, I think they are planning more than an affair. I sat on the dusty floor until the afternoon light disappeared. I felt betrayed by my husband. I felt betrayed by my sister. But beneath the grief was something colder. Fear. I did not confront them. That was the first smart decision I made. The next morning, I drove to the bank. The safe deposit box contained copies of my mother's financial records, photographs of Daniel and Mara together, and a business card for a private investigator named Samuel Reed. There was also a document showing that Daniel had tried to persuade my mother to place the Bellwether house in a family trust controlled by him. She had refused. I called Samuel from a payphone outside a grocery store. He agreed to meet me at a diner in Franklin. Samuel was in his early 60s, with silver hair and the tired eyes of a man who had spent years watching people disappoint each other. He listened without interrupting. Then he placed a folder on the table. "Your mother hired me 6 weeks before she died," he said. Inside the folder were photographs of Daniel entering Mara's apartment. Bank records showed regular transfers from one of our joint accounts to a company called Red Fern Holdings. Red Fern Holdings belonged to Mara. More than $180,000 had been transferred over 9 months. "Why didn't my mother give this to me?" I asked. "She planned to." Then her condition declined quickly. "Why didn't you contact me?" Samuel looked uncomfortable. "Because someone called my office 3 days after her funeral. The caller said she was Claire Bennett and ordered me to close the investigation. It wasn't me." "I know that now." He slid another page toward me. It was a copy of a life insurance policy for $3 million. The policy insured my life. Daniel was the only beneficiary. My signature was at the bottom. It looked perfect. I had never signed it. The room seemed to tilt. I held the table with both hands. Samuel told me to leave Daniel immediately and go to the police. But I knew what would happen. Daniel would deny everything. Mara would support him. The photographs proved an affair, and the bank transfers proved theft. But neither proved they planned to kill me. Daniel managed money for judges, doctors, business owners, and 2 members of the county commission. He had friends in every office that mattered. If I accused him too soon, he would know I had discovered the truth. And then he would move faster. I asked Samuel to continue investigating in secret. He studied me for a moment. "Can you go home and behave normally?" "I don't know." "Then learn. Your life may depend on it." For the next 3 weeks, I lived beside a man who might be planning my death. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I kissed him goodnight. Sometimes he wrapped his arm around me while he slept, and I stared into the darkness until morning. During the day, Samuel followed him. Daniel met Mara at hotels, restaurants, and the East Cottage on my property. He also met a man named Travis Cole, who owned a struggling towing company and had a criminal record for insurance fraud. Samuel recorded one meeting in a parking garage. The sound was poor, but we heard Daniel say, "The road by Miller's Ridge. No guardrail. Bad weather would make it believable." Miller's Ridge was on the road I drove between Nashville and Bellwether. 2 days later, Daniel suggested a weekend trip to the Smoky Mountains for our anniversary. "We can take the scenic route," he said. "Drive through Miller's Ridge." I smiled across the dinner table. That sounds perfect. I had never hated anyone more than I hated him in that moment. Samuel wanted to contact the state police immediately. This time I agreed. We met Detective Lina Ortiz at a quiet office outside Nashville. She listened to the recording and examined the documents. She believed me, but belief was not enough. The parking garage recording did not clearly identify the plan or the target. Travis could claim they were discussing towing accidents. The forged insurance application required examination. The financial crimes would take time. "Cancel the trip," Detective Ortiz said. I asked what would happen if I did. "They may delay or change the plan." She did not answer. That was when I proposed something that frightened all three of us. I would take the trip. But I would not be in the car when it reached Miller's Ridge. Detective Ortiz rejected the idea at first. Samuel called it reckless. Yet the more we discussed it, the more possible it became. The police could track the car from a distance. I would wear a recording device. At a gas station 20 miles before the ridge, I would leave the car through the rear restroom exit. An undercover officer with my coat and hat would sit in the passenger seat, just long enough for Daniel to believe I was still there. She would leave before the dangerous section. The police expected Daniel to contact Travis. They hoped to catch both men preparing the crash. But Daniel changed the plan. On Friday afternoon, he called and said an emergency client meeting would keep him in Nashville. "Why don't you drive up tonight?" he suggested. "I'll meet you at the cabin tomorrow morning." I understood immediately. He never planned to be in the car. I called Detective Ortiz. We adjusted. At 6 that evening, I left Nashville alone in my silver SUV. Rain began falling as I passed Franklin. By 7, it had become a storm. I knew police vehicles were behind me, but I could not see them. Samuel had placed a tracker beneath my car. A small recording device was hidden inside my necklace. At 7:20, a black pickup appeared in my mirror. It stayed 4 car lengths behind me. When I slowed, it slowed. When I changed lanes, it followed. My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. I answered through the car speakers. "Where are you?" he asked. "About 30 minutes from Miller's Ridge." "Is the weather bad?" "Very." There was a pause. Then he said, "Be careful." "Sweetheart." Those were the last words my husband expected to say to me. The black pickup moved closer. At the planned gas station, I pulled beneath the bright lights and parked beside the building. I entered the women's restroom and left through a service door. Detective Ortiz was waiting in an unmarked van. An officer wearing my beige coat walked out the front entrance, entered my SUV, and drove away. From the pickup's position across the highway, she looked like me. 5 miles later, she turned into a closed rest area. The black pickup continued toward the ridge. Police units followed. What happened next was not part of our plan. Travis stopped beside my empty SUV after the officer abandoned it. He smashed the driver's window, released the parking brake, and attached a cable from his truck. He pulled the SUV toward the edge of the ridge. Then he poured gasoline across the front seats. The police moved in before he could light it. Travis ran. He reached the trees before a state trooper tackled him in the mud. Inside his truck, officers found gasoline, gloves, a burner phone, and a printed photograph of me. They also found $20,000 in cash. The burner phone contained messages from a number registered under a false name. One message said, "Maisiawati identifier." Another said, "Aftar Ferik Salamini." The final message had arrived 3 minutes before Travis's arrest. It said, "Esma Wafadid." The police arrested Daniel at our Nashville home shortly before midnight. Mara was with him. Detective Ortiz told me I should stay hidden while investigators built the case. Only 6 people knew I was alive. Travis was placed in isolation. Daniel and Mara were told that my burned vehicle had been recovered at the bottom of Miller's Ridge. But authorities were still searching for my body. Then Detective Ortiz asked me a question. "How far are you willing to take this?" I thought of the empty coffin before it even existed. "As far as the truth needs to go," I said. The police released Daniel after questioning. They did not tell him about the messages or Travis's arrest. They said they lacked enough evidence to hold him. In reality, they wanted to watch him. Daniel performed grief beautifully. He stood before television cameras with red eyes and begged for information about my disappearance. He offered a $50,000 reward. He held our wedding photograph against his chest and called me the love of his life. Mara stood behind him, wearing my mother's pearl earrings. 3 days later, search crews announced they had found human remains near the burned vehicle. The remains were unidentified. That detail did not matter to the news. By evening, every station reported that I was presumed dead. Daniel arranged my funeral before the laboratory results were complete. He chose a closed coffin. I watched the service from a private room in the sheriff's office. A hidden camera had been placed inside the funeral home. My friends cried. Former guests from the Bellwether house brought flowers. The pastor spoke about my kindness. Daniel sat in the front row, holding Mara's hand beneath a folded coat. At the cemetery, he placed a white rose on my coffin. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry it had to be this way." The microphone hidden in his jacket caught every word. That night, Daniel and Mara returned to the Bellwether house. They opened champagne in my mother's dining room. Samuel had installed cameras with a warrant. From a monitor, Detective Ortiz and I watched my husband kiss my sister beneath the chandelier my father had hung. Mara laughed and asked, "When do we get the money?" "The first policy should pay within 2 weeks," Daniel said. "And the house? A's her husband. I inherit everything." Amara lifted her glass. "To new beginnings." Daniel did not drink. He stared at her and said, "We still have a problem." Her smile faded. "What problem?" "Your messages to Travis." Mara set down her glass. My entire body went still. Until that moment, I believed Daniel had hired Travis. Mara began pacing. "You told me to handle it." "I told you to find someone dependable." "I didn't tell you to message him directly." He said he deleted everything. "People say many things when you give them cash." Mara turned on him. "Don't act like this was my idea." "You forged the policy. You planned the route. You said Claire was too weak to fight back." Daniel grabbed her wrist. "Keep your voice down." "Why? She's dead." For the first time in 11 days, I spoke inside that house. My voice came through the hidden speaker in the dining room. "No, Mara," I said. "I'm listening." Both of them froze. Mara's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Daniel looked toward the ceiling. His face turned white. "Claire," he whispered. I pressed the microphone closer. "You buried an empty coffin." Mara screamed. Daniel ran to the front door, but state police were already on the porch. Officers entered through every exit. Detective Ortiz arrested Daniel in the hallway. Mara tried to escape through the kitchen and fell over a chair. I wanted to be there when they were taken away. The police refused. They said it was too dangerous. So I watched on the monitor as my husband was led out of my mother's house in handcuffs. I expected to feel satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. Justice had begun, but revenge was not finished. The investigation uncovered more than we expected. Daniel had forged my signature on the life insurance policy. He had also forged loan documents, using the Bellwether house as security. He had stolen money from 3 elderly clients and hidden it through Red Fern Holdings. Mara had created the company. She had transferred money, hired Travis, and sent the messages. She had also been the person who called Samuel after Mother's funeral, pretending to be me. Travis accepted a deal. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he described the entire plan. Daniel had promised him $50,000. Travis was supposed to force my SUV off the road, burn it, and leave enough personal items to identify me. If my body could not be found, Daniel would use the presumed death process and the fabricated remains to accelerate the insurance claim. The remains near the ridge belonged to an unidentified woman who had died years earlier. Travis had purchased them through a former crematory employee involved in illegal trafficking. That detail haunted me more than anything else. Some woman had died without a name, and they had tried to use her forgotten bones to erase mine. I asked Detective Ortiz to keep investigating until they identified her. Her name was Rebecca Lane. She had disappeared from Kentucky 12 years earlier. She had a daughter who was still searching for her. Because of my case, Rebecca finally went home. Daniel's attorneys tried to argue that the recordings were misunderstood. They said he only wanted to scare me. Mara's attorney blamed Daniel and described her as emotionally controlled. Then my mother delivered the final piece of evidence from beyond the grave. Samuel returned to the safe deposit box and examined every paper again. Inside a false bottom, he found a memory card. The card contained security footage from the East Cottage. 6 weeks before Mother died, Daniel and Mara had met there. The video showed their faces clearly. It also recorded their conversation. Daniel explained that if Mother placed the house in a trust, he could borrow against it. Mara asked what would happen if Mother refused. He said, "Then we wait until Claire owns it." Mara asked, "And if Claire refuses?" Daniel smiled. "Claire signs whatever I put in front of her." Then, Mara asked the question that ended any hope of mercy. "What if she finds out about us?" Daniel answered, "Then she won't be around long enough to tell anyone." My mother had hidden the camera after seeing them kiss. She had captured the beginning of their plan. The weeks before the trial were harder than I expected. People imagined that surviving meant I felt lucky every morning. Some mornings, I did. On other mornings, I woke at the smallest sound and reached for a husband who had tried to kill me. Habit moved faster than memory. Then I remembered the ridge, the gasoline, and the empty coffin. I stopped sleeping in our Nashville home. The police had released it after completing their search, but every room felt dishonest. Our wedding photographs were still on the walls. Daniel's coffee mug sat beside the sink. A blue shirt he had worn on our last anniversary hung in the closet. I packed nothing for him. I hired a company to place every item he owned in storage. I kept the photographs only because prosecutors might need them. When the workers carried away the last box, I sat on the bare bedroom floor and cried for the marriage I thought I had. I was not crying for Daniel. I was crying for the woman who had loved him. That difference mattered. Mara sent me 6 letters from jail. The first blamed Daniel. The second blamed our mother. The third blamed me for receiving the house. In the fourth, she apologized. But every apology was followed by the word, because. She was sorry because she had been lonely. She was sorry because Daniel had manipulated her. She was sorry because Mother had always preferred me. I returned every letter unopened after that. Samuel told me guilt speaks plainly. It does not bring a list of excuses. Meanwhile, investigators traced Daniel's theft through 12 accounts in 4 states. Each discovery revealed another victim. One was an 81-year-old widow named Mrs. Carter, who had trusted Daniel with the savings her husband left her. He had taken nearly $70,000 from her. I visited her with the prosecutor. She held my hand and apologized for crying. "I thought I was foolish," she said. I understood her shame because I carried the same one. Trusting someone is not the crime, I told her. Betraying that trust is. When I heard myself say it, I realized I finally believed it about myself too. At trial, I sat 20 feet from Daniel. He looked smaller than I remembered. Without his dark suits and polished office, he was only an aging man with frightened eyes. Mara would not look at me. The prosecutor played the messages, the dining room recording, the funeral whisper, and Mother's video. Travis testified for 2 days. Financial experts explained the forged documents and stolen money. Then I took the witness stand. Daniel's attorney asked whether grief had made me suspicious. He asked whether my marriage had been unhappy. He asked whether I enjoyed pretending to be dead so I could spy on my husband. I answered calmly. Finally, he said, "Mrs. Bennet, isn't it true that you wanted revenge?" I looked at Daniel. "Yes," I said. The courtroom became silent. The attorney seemed surprised. "So you admit this was revenge?" I wanted the truth to find them before they could hide from it. "If you call that revenge, then yes. You wanted them to suffer." I thought about my coffin lowering into the ground. I thought about Mara wearing mother's earrings. I thought about Rebecca Lane's daughter, waiting 12 years for an answer. "No," I said. "I wanted them to stop making other people suffer." The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Daniel was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, forgery, money laundering, and theft. He received 8 years in prison. Mara was convicted on nearly the same charges. She received 6 years. Travis received 18 years under his agreement. When the judge asked whether I wanted to speak before sentencing, I stood and faced them. "Daniel, you told everyone I was weak. You believed kindness meant I had no courage. You were wrong. Mara, I spent my whole life protecting you from consequences. That was not kindness. It helped you become the person sitting here today. I will always regret that. You both wanted my house, my money, and my name. Now the house is mine. The stolen money will be returned. And my name is the reason no one will ever trust either of yours again." Mara finally looked at me. She was crying. "Claire," she whispered, "I'm your sister." For most of my life, those words would have opened the door to forgiveness before she had earned it. This time, they did not. "You were," I said. I walked out before the guards took her away. The Bellwether house remained closed for almost a year. I could not enter the dining room without hearing the champagne glass break. I could not sleep upstairs without remembering my mother's warning. For a while, I considered selling it. Then Rebecca Lane's daughter visited me. Her name was Hannah. She brought a photograph of her mother at 29, smiling beside a lake. She thanked me for insisting that the remains be identified. "You gave her name back," Hannah said. That sentence changed something inside me. I realized the house did not belong to Daniel's crime. It did not belong to Mara's greed. It belonged to every person who had loved within its walls, including me. I reopened it the following spring. I renamed the East Cottage Rebecca's Cottage. A portion of its income now supports families searching for missing women. I also created the Evelyn Fund, named after my mother, to provide emergency housing for women escaping financial abuse. Samuel became a regular guest. Detective Ortiz attended the reopening ceremony. Hannah brought her daughter and planted a white rose near the porch. On the first night, every room was full. I stood alone in the dining room after the guests went upstairs. The old chandelier cast warm light across the table. The floorboards creaked in the hallway, just as they had when I was a child. For years, I believed revenge meant giving pain back to the people who gave it to you. I was wrong. The best revenge was taking everything they tried to destroy and making it useful again. Daniel wanted my death to make him rich. Instead, his crime returned stolen money to his victims. Mara wanted my home. Instead, her betrayal turned it into a refuge for women like me. They tried to erase my name. Instead, they made sure the whole country remembered it. Sometimes people ask whether I forgave them. I tell them forgiveness is not a key that criminals are owed. It is a door I may open someday for my own peace. But if I open it, Daniel and Mara will not be waiting on the other side. My peace no longer depends on them. I still visit the cemetery once a year. My empty grave remains beneath a maple tree. The stone has my name, my birth year, and the year Daniel believed he had ended my life. I could have removed it. I chose not to. I had one final line carved beneath my name. It says, Eshii mas burid. Nosto nautista. Every time I read it, I remember the woman I used to be. She trusted too easily. She apologized for asking questions. She mistook silence for peace and sacrifice for love. That woman did die, but I did not. I walked back to the bellwether house as evening settled over Tennessee. Its windows glowed above the trees. Voices drifted from the porch. People were laughing inside the home my husband had tried to steal. I opened the front door, stepped into the light, and understood the truth at last. They had buried the woman who feared them. The woman who came home was the one they should have feared all along.